What's up, everyone? Welcome to week 2, Paladin week, day 1 of Roundtable Theories, pre-made videos for the Theories of the Roundtable podcast. So as I said, this week we're doing Paladin, and so this is the first video of 3. Tom is going to post a video, and Fernando is going to post a video. We may have one on Friday before the podcast, but this is going to be the first one of the week. So we're going to be discussing a Combo Paladin deck that I've come up with. I came up with on Friday after the podcast, and it's seen some pretty great results so far on the ladder. So really quickly, before we go into the deck itself, we are going to take a brief trip back in time and kind of take a look and see what Paladin has really become over the months with the release of different sets. So obviously, pre-GVG, it's a really hard, dedicated control Paladin. You saw, a quality Consecrate, a quality Pyromancer with, things like Ysera, Tyrion Forward Ring, big endgame threats. And it just really was a pain in the neck to get through. And, it just really kind of controlled the game in its favor, and then it put down its endgame threats and then just beat you from there. Then we had GVG release, and with GVG's release, we got 2 crucial cards for the deck, that being Shielded Minibot, which is a great card for the mid-rangey kind of decks where you get to play something on 2 and it kind of sticks around. It's got Divine Shield, so it gets to stick around a little bit and get some value. The other card was Muster. Actually, I'm sorry, we got a bunch of cards. We got that. We got Muster for Battle, wherever that is here. Muster for Battle. You get a lot of value out of this. You can trade in with your opponent's 2/1s. If you coin this on 2, you get 3 Silver Hand Recruits. And then we saw, obviously, with that, we saw the Quartermaster come in as the buff, and players like Trump were playing the mid-range variant of this deck and pushing it to Legend, hitting number 1 Legend with it. And so this was a really strong contender for a good while in the ladder, and that hasn't really changed too much. We also saw very rarely some control variants, but mostly it was this mid-range kind of style that was really strong and taking over the Paladin game in terms of the laddering. And now that we have Blackrock Mountain released, we have the Dragon Paladin, which obviously with the Paladin card that we got from Blackrock Mountain Dragon Consort, obviously this is a go-to method of building the Paladin deck. It's a very strong card, and this pretty much enables another kind of strategy. It enables you to play some of your bigger endgame dragons that you really wanted to play, the big scary ones. So this is a really viable kind of strategy. Now there's 2 schools of thought with this kind of strategy, to load up your deck with dragons like crazy, which is the less popular of the beliefs amongst top-end players. And then there's the don't even really put all that many in there if you're playing this style. Just play Dragon Consort, play Chrome-Magus, Ysera, and call it a day. I personally like playing lots of dragons, but that's just, I think it's just pretty cool to do something like that. Trump is still playing his standard, mid-rangey kind of control, or mid-rangey variant that he was playing, that he played up to Legend beforehand, as far as I'm aware. But which is all fine and good. It's still an absolutely fine deck to play. Not my absolute favorite. I tried playing the deck for a while. It was kind of cool. It was fun, but really wasn't my end-all be-all cup of tea. So, also too with Blackrock Mountain's release, we kind of saw, we didn't even see it yet, but we see the potential for some combo Paladin things happening, some aggressive style of combo Paladin with things like Blessing of Mights, where they are, Blessing of Mights, make your minion have 3 health. You have Blessing of Kings, the old school buffs. But then they get enabled by Emperor Tharasan, which is going to reduce the cost by 1, and you just, you play Faceless Manipulator in combo with Arcane Golem and stuff like that, and you just kill your opponent 1 turn. Pretty crazy, not necessarily super popular, but I have a different style Control Paladin, more along the mid-rangey kind of focus, and it's a really, really sweet deck. I've laddered with it, gotten some win streaks off of it, so it's great. So let's go ahead and take a look. So the curve on this deck is absolutely whack. Really, really odd, definitely. It lacks early game, but it has a good mid game and a solid late game to really kind of push you through to the end of the match. Mulligans for this deck, you definitely do want to mulligan for some of that early game the early game you can get, your mini bots and your Blackwing technicians. Really, those are kind of crucial. Without those, you could really kind of have a hard time. Really, I guess, unless you hit like some of your good like sweepers, like you hit, the consecrations and stuff like that. If you hit those aggro matchups, you may have a hard time. But the times that I've played against Patron and I've just shut down Patron altogether, just really hard shut it down with this deck. So really interesting deck. So we'll go through the list here. So we got the Blessings of Might. Obviously, it's a great card. It becomes free with a Thaurissan, so this is great. Hand of Protection, we'll go over this in a minute. Minibot standard. We have the Aldor Peacekeepers because we need that value. We need to be able to trade in favorably. Technicians are great. Value, 3 mana, 3/5s are really good. Champions because they're staple. Consecration because it's stable. Now I went over Blessing of Kings. We'll talk about this as well. Dragonkin Sorcerer we'll also talk about in a minute. We got Azure Drakes, Blackwing Corruptors, Consort because it's obvious for this kind of deck. Thaurissan because it's too good. It's obvious for this kind of deck. Boom. Lay on Hands, Chromagus, Tyrion, and Nefarian. So, our win conditions for this deck are either to get a really big Dragonkin Sorcerer and punch through for a lot of damage, or we play the standard, mid-rangey kind of feels. The win conditions there is just we chip our opponent down, we gain value off of our minions, and we just outpace them throughout the whole entire game. Relatively easy to do. So go through here. So we'll talk about the first win condition because it's the most interesting and what really makes this deck the Combo Paladin. Is the Dragonkin Sorcerer. Now I have a philosophy that I do not like playing combo decks that are board-based combo decks that are not involving stealth, like Miracle Rogue or Malgos Rogue or anything like that. I love those kinds of decks, but or they don't have charge like Patron Warrior. So if it doesn't have those two things, I generally will not play it. I found that Dragonkin Sorcerer, put it with a Hand of Protection, not that bad actually. You get a 4/6. You get a 4/6 with a divine shield, which is pretty good. You generally when you're playing this on 5, you're pretty ahead on board, or you're playing it to an empty board after you've basically like traded off and gotten value. So you're setting up the field and making them deal with this kind of threat that you have. The amount of times that this guy has actually gotten silenced out of the like 10 games that I've played with this deck, I can count on one hand. It's very rare that this guy, for some reason, ever gets silenced. So you got your Dragonkin Sorcerer. So your buff package is in the 2 mights, the 2 hands, and the 2 kings. It's incredibly strong. Obviously you're gonna slap +5/+5 on this guy and then beat down in the face. It's really great. Great thing to have. Now also too, the great thing is that you can go Technician on 3, Kings on 4 on the Technician. Now you got a really big Technician. Well, this is also now a threat, and something that has to be dealt with. Obviously anything this all goes for any of these cards as well. Goes for anything in general. A couple of interesting things. So obviously the Corruptors are great for dealing that 3 damage to get you the value. You can trade off for a free minion there, here and there. Not a bad thing. And the people may think, why Chromagus? You really don't have any draw aside from Azure Drakes in the deck. Well, the interesting thing about Chromagus is that, and we talked about this in our last podcast, is that if he sticks around, great, you get his effect. You can double up on whatever the next card is that you draw, and it may be a buff, it may be a Blessing of Might. You get double Blessing of Mights. That's pretty great. But if anything, he eats a removal spell that you really don't want to be hitting your Dragonkin Sorcerer. So if you play him and he eats a removal spell, if he eats a Shadow Word Death, for example, great. That's perfectly fine. That just means there's just one less removal spell for your Dragonkin Sorcerer when the time comes to play him. So overall, this deck has been really sweet. You just kind of get out to your end game, and then you stabilize on these big minions in the end game. If they get dealt with you, then you're probably dealing with their minions as well. So your opponent's probably trading into your guys, 2 for 1 or 3 for 1, and then you just pop a Dragonkin Sorcerer down on the board, and you start to go a little insane. You can really, really race decks like Face Hunter with this kind of strategy, because they're obviously going to hit you. So you get a 4/6 Divine Shield, and then the next turn, you buff it with a Might and a King's. Well, you definitely have the potential to race a Face Hunter or anything like that. So overall, this deck is absolutely sweet. I absolutely love this deck so much. It was really fun to build it and to tweak it and to test it and play it on ladder. Definitely give it a shot. Really, for replacements, I mean, Nefarian, if you don't have Blackrock Mountain, probably don't play this deck, because this deck revolves around that kind of thing. But if you don't have, if you don't want to play Nefarian, or if you don't want to play Chromagus, you can play Ysera. Perfectly fine. You can probably play Alexstrasza in this. I would imagine that wouldn't be too bad. You may also note there's no Sylvanas. I took Sylvanas out. The original incarnation had no Nefarian, but had Sylvanas in here, mostly because, we don't have our own ways of activating Sylvanas, which I kind of like using Sylvanas in an offensive manner, like trading into trades to steal something. So we don't have any way to really necessarily activate Sylvanas on our own. And it was the most easily cuttable card out of all of these, just to fit another dragon in there. Other than that, yeah, Boom is pretty staple, really kind of hard to replace him with anything. Maybe you might be able to get away with something like, I don't know, maybe like a Black Knight, or or a Ragnaros or something like that. Interesting, and choices, but really Boom's kind of crucial. Tharzan's kind of crucial. Aside from that, really, like, all of these cards are pretty much either you have Blackrock Mountain and you have them, or if you play Paladin, they're pretty stable Paladin cards, and you should have them anyways, like Tyrion and Leon Hands, and so really it's a pretty straightforward build. The buff package is kind of set in stone. I've tried it with other different kinds of buffs. Like, I've tried it with Blessing of Wisdom. Blessing of Wisdom really was just too slow for my liking. I tried it with one, and I never found a good spot to put it in. So Hand of Protection really just gives you the ability to trade up really efficiently, and it also just makes your Dragonkin Sorcerer nice and huge. So that's always a bonus there. So that concludes the deck. Thank you guys for checking it out. I will not be on the podcast this week. This week will be just Tom, Fernando, Ryan, I believe, and then they may have our fifth person, Tim, join them. I will be out of town, so be sure to definitely check that out. Twitch.tv/roundtabletheories. Definitely like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on the Twitch, and then our Twitter is TOTRT Podcast, Theories of the Roundtable, shortened TOTRT Podcast. So definitely go ahead and follow us on Twitter as well. We do like to interact with people through Twitter on the show. But then, like I said, again, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, Friday, twitch.tv/roundtabletheories. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys on Friday.